Jesus sent off, and so Peru are piling on the pressure. There's a few Brazilians biting their nails before they clinch it right at the end with a penalty. So it was much more of a game than we'd feared, but the better team won. And perhaps the unfortunate thing for the tournament was that Brazil won this without playing either Uruguay or Colombia. The two sides, looking at the entire field, the two sides you're thinking, they would have given them a game. In every match that Brazil played, including the semi-final against Argentina, Brazil were overwhelming favourites. Would have been interesting to see them against Uruguay or Colombia.
Okay. You mentioned Jesus there, who scored. He had an assist, and then he was sent off, 2 yellows. And, Jesus, I mean, I didn't know realise he was so emotional. He gave the VAR camera a good old thwack and kicked the water bottle, and then was sitting on the steps crying. And initially I was thinking, well, you need to grow up here. And then after a while, I almost felt sorry for him. He's properly, out of control in a way. Is this kind of the norm for Jesus?
It is, yeah. He's a little bit of a mummy's boy, and his mother is one of those genuine Brazilian heroes who, on a cleaner's salary, as a single mother, raised a family and raised them very well. But Gabriel Jesus as the kind of kid brother there, he's perhaps been a little bit spoilt. He's the gesture that he makes every time he scores a goal. He simulates that he's making a phone call. Yeah. That's a phone call that he's making to his mum. So there's a little bit of a kid there, and he tends to look sad even when he's happy. I think Gabriel Jesus, and maybe there's a lack perhaps of mental strength. It was certainly a problem this time last year because Gabriel Jesus went through the World Cup with a rare distinction of being a Brazil number 9 who didn't manage to score a goal. And one of the themes, and there are a number of themes in this Copa America, but one of the themes of the tournament was his kind of the resurrection of I hadn't thought about this before, but the resurrection of Jesus, if you like, because the first game against, I know it's weak, isn't it really, but I've had a long, hard tournament. That first meeting against Peru, the group game, last minute, Brazil are 5-0 up, and they get a penalty, and it's given to Gabriel Jesus in a way of saying, score a tournament goal, and he missed it. He got saved, and he was absolutely distraught then, really distraught. So Brazil have won 5-0. They're all going off the field happy, but he is absolutely distraught. Next game, quarter-final against Paraguay, straight to penalties after 90. Who has to step up and take the decisive 5th penalty that gets Brazil through to the semis? Gabriel Jesus. So that was his redemption, and scored in both the semi and the final before getting himself sent off. So he's one of the stories of the Copa America. In fact, I think there's 3 great stories, all in that first goal that Brazil scored. The long ball from Daniel Alves. Now, Daniel Alves, 36 years old, voted the player of the tournament. He is currently unemployed. Doesn't have a club. Goes up to Gabriel Jesus, the long pass. Gabriel Jesus, little shimmy and a cross in. And meeting it there, first time finish, the breakout star of this tournament, Everton, the little onion, as he's known. The only player in the Brazil side to be still playing in Brazil. He won't be in Brazil for very much longer. So those 3 players combining, 3 almost different generations, if you like, and you can tell so much of the story of the Copa America through the exchanges in that opening goal.
Why Little Onion?
I don't know. He was always called the Onion, and perhaps he's got a kind of onion-shaped head. I mean, he certainly made quite a few defenders cry in this tournament. And what is so interesting about him, that was a bit stronger than the resurrection of Jesus, wasn't it? What's so interesting about him is that he's 2-footed, and he's strongest on his right. All 3 goals he scored, joint top scorer in the competition. All 3 goals he scored were cutting in onto his stronger right foot. Yeah. But he can go outside the fullback and pull across with his left foot as well. So always putting doubt in the mind of the defenders.
So, Tim, the Brazilian manager Chiche has a modern approach, and he likes to win back possession and to do that quickly. And we're very familiar with that style of football. And I'm looking at these forward players like the Little Onion, who will now refuse to call Everton going forward. So Everton, Firmino, Coutinho, Jesus, and I think, I can see how that works. I can see how Chiche's making that work. And then I think a pesky old Neymar coming back into the fold down the line and ruining everything.
No, I don't think he does. And where does he fit in now? And there were times during this tournament when they missed him. There were times. I know you're ill-disposed to him. Declare your interest, Joe Molloy. But there were times when they missed him. And where would he come in? The obvious one to give way for him is Felipe Coutinho, who didn't have a particularly great tournament. Looks like a little kid lost some of the times. And you can see Neymar in a more central role in the role that Coutinho is now playing, especially now that the balance of the midfield is more defensive. You've got two midfielders behind him, allowing him to float. So that, I think, will be what Brazil look at when they get him back. And I think they would love to have him back. I know there's all the circus around him and it's difficult to administer, but he is a player who is capable of absolute magic. And I'm sure he'll be back for Brazil, and I'm pretty sure that they'll welcome him back and they'll need him back, because this Copa America, especially given the fact that they didn't play Uruguay or Colombia, this Copa America was, as tests go, it was fairly gentle. Right. It was all about can Brazil get the first goal.
Okay.
The real test, and the last 4 World Cups have made this abundantly clear, the real test is knockout stages, Western European team. Every time that's happened to Brazil in the last 4 World Cups, that's when they've been eliminated. So that's what they have to build towards now. And 1 or 2 problems along the way. And one is that Daniel Alves, and imagine how last year's World Cup might have been different had he not been injured. Daniel Alves is now 36 and surely won't be around in 3.5 years' time. So they have to replace him, and he brings them so much. Another is they don't have the midfield control that they had, say, 2 years ago when Chichi first took over. And another is that they need, even if it's an option on the bench, they need a penalty area centre forward. They need more penalty area presence. Okay. So lots to put right, but also lots of time in which to do it. Okay.
I was reading, by the way, Alves, that was his 40th major title in domestic and international football as well. 40 titles in his 36 years. On the scenes at full time, the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, elected last year, I see his approval rating after his 100 days is lower than any other leader since the country's return to democracy. He's gone from 50% down to 32%. This guy is a far right-wing candidate and won a very divisive election, vowing to crack down on criminals, to roll back those terrible environmental regulations in a very Trumpian way, restrict abortions, relax gun laws. He's been accused of being a homophobe. We, Tim, here have a rich tradition of politicians inserting themselves front and centre of these big sporting achievements. I mean, we are right up there. But Bolsonaro got right in the mix as well. This is where I need your eyes, because I guess you would have seen it. I've seen things like, well, he was booed by fans. I don't know how true that is. I've seen it being said that the Brazilian manager Chiche avoided hugging him and looked very uncomfortable with this guy trying to hog the limelight. Talk to us about the scenes at full time.
Yeah, I didn't see it with my own eyes, because right on the final whistle, I had broadcasting commitments and writing commitments, so I went down into the press area. So I'm a little bit relying on things that others have told me who were still up watching it. Bolsonaro was greeted by both cheers and boos from the crowd. It's kind of his constituency, because the ticket prices are very expensive. So I think he was looking for a good reaction. But then again, the Maracanã has a reputation of booing anything. There's a phrase over here that the Maracanã will even boo a minute's silence. Thankfully, it didn't do that for João Gilberto, the great bossa nova musician, who was honoured with a minute's silence before the match. Yet, from the images that I saw, Bolsonaro was trying to act as if he'd scored the winning goals himself. With Chichi, he's treading on eggshells here, and he said nothing that could be directly interpreted 100% in that direction, but it seems pretty obvious that he is not a fan, which makes him fairly rare in the world of Brazilian football, which is quite frequently a rampantly right-wing world, and he has made it fairly clear, I think, that he doesn't want to be involved in any way, but he's doing it in a discreet way, which I think he has every right to do. Why get yourself burned in this polarized political environment with something that doesn't actually have anything to do with your job? But I think Chichi, perhaps through what he doesn't do more than what he actually does do, is making his position abundantly clear.
Is there any obvious reason why it seems the majority of Brazilian footballers who go into politics after their career seem to end up on the right wing?
Well, it's Brazilian football is a very right-wing world, really. It's a very intolerant world. Brazilian stadiums can be quite right-wing places. Brazil are repeatedly getting fined now for something that they've stupidly imported from Mexico this homophobic habit of yelling abuse at the rival goalkeeper whenever he takes a goal kick. And they're trying to stamp this out, but it's the Brazil fans are doing it again and again and again, and they're picking up fine after fine after fine as a result of doing this. And Brazilian football is a very, very socially conservative world. The political divide has been expressed, I think, wrongly in more cultural terms than economic terms. In more kind of identity politics, and part of the Bolsonaro appeal is a pushback against women's rights, homosexual rights. And Bolsonaro talks about recreating the Brazil of the 1960s, recreating the Brazil of the military dictatorship, when everyone knew their place. Damn it, there's this freedom gone mad. First one wants freedom, then the whole damn world wants freedom. It's gone mad. So there's this rosy, nostalgic image of when everything was right with the world and everyone knew their place. And that's been turned upside down by my uppity niece who seems to want to run the world instead of being a nice little housewife. So there is this kind of battle of cultural perceptions. But I think one of the reasons that the Bolsonaro approval rating is falling so high is he doesn't have anything to offer economically.
Right.
The right over here seems to have gone absolutely mad and seem to think that you can have an economy without consumption. You can have a thriving economy without poor people having any money in their pockets. So I tend to think that will be seen through. They went on for years about the PT government was the reason for the economic collapse. There's been no PT Workers' Party government now for more than 3 years, and nothing's improved. They're going to have to start either coming up with some solutions, or thinking of another excuse.
Before the clock comes against us, a word in Argentina. Messi was sent off, obviously, in the fourth place playoff. The only other time being his very first game for Argentina. So this isn't equally ludicrous. This isn't him bookending his career, I hope. He's not walking off in disgust, is he? It's
a possibility, although the reason that he was here, I don't think he came out in Argentina with any real expectation of winning a title. It was a different Messi. It was a Messi. It was very vocal, very communicative. He wanted to be the leader. He wants to be part of this new Argentina. A lot of criticisms of him in the past with Argentina. He just stays in his own little world, and that's not good for the other players. Nothing of that about this time. He was, he was singing the national anthem for what that's worth, and vocal on the pitch, encouraging on the pitch. Spoke for hours.
Sorry to interrupt. He wouldn't sing the anthem up until now?
No, well, he's quite quiet, and he didn't. He was mostly tight-lipped during the anthem. But now he was making a point. He wanted to be seen singing it. It's a different posture. It's Messi as a leader. He would talk to the journalists for hours after the games in the mix zone. It's a little bit like a forwards tackle. Sometimes forwards will tackle with more enthusiasm and skill. Perhaps that helped Gabriel Jesus get sent off on Sunday. And Messi, this new communicative, vocal Messi, I think he's talked himself into trouble because he's used the C word, corruption. Now, the South American
did he say that, by the way, after
he
was sent off or before he was sent off?
Both, I think.
Okay.
And the tournament's been set up for Brazil, and we don't have to be part of this corruption. Now, obviously, his sending off in the fourth place off has nothing to do with favouring Brazil or otherwise. Argentina have no chance of the title by then. He was clearly on the end of a very, very bad decision. I think he's rushed into this perhaps with more enthusiasm than ability in terms of verbally expressing himself. If you're going to use that word corruption, because the South American authorities are so sensitive about this after the FIFA-gate scandal of 3 years ago, which was a scandal of the Americas, they are trying to project ceaselessly. They're trying to project an image of transparency and so on. You're going to use that word, and you're not providing any proof. You are leaving yourself open to the charge of bringing the game into disrepute. So he could get a ban. So even if on the one hand he seems to want to be part of this new project from Argentina, there are things weighing on the other hand that may bring an end to his international career. And he was fed up with the pitches here. He wasn't happy with the refereeing. He was very justified, I think, in both of those things. And he could end up now getting a suspension for the South American equivalent of bringing the game into disrepute. So we await what will happen with Messi in Argentina. But certainly, and while the ball was rolling, he seemed very much to want to be a part of this new Argentine project.
Right. It was a kind of ridiculous sending off involved with Gary Medel. Yeah. Had it been a spiky game before that? Because just looked, yeah. Okay.
Very. And this, for me, from what it's worth, this is my interpretation of what's going on. It was a spiky game, and Argentina were fueled by their sense of injustice that they thought they should have had a couple of penalties in the game against Brazil, the semi-final. For Chile, this was the last game on the big stage for this team.
Yeah.
Almost all of whom are over 30. They have to rebuild now, so that was their last game, and they were being humiliated. Messi was pulling all the strings. Argentina were 2-0 up, could have been 3-0 up, and it was really, really getting spiky, and the referee was out of his depth. He'd lost control. My interpretation is it was a premeditated decision from the referees. He was thinking, right, next flare up, I'm going to do the old South American thing of trying to re-establish my authority by sending one off from either side. So the speed with which he brandishes the red card is extraordinary. It's just straight up, straight out. He hasn't had time really to digest actually what has happened. So that would be my interpretation. Okay. That it was a foolish attempt to re-establish his authority. A weak referee, overcompensating, trying to be too strong.
A Gary Medel for a Lionel Messi is a good deal if you're Chile. So you mentioned Messi finally talking more. That is very interesting, and singing the anthem. Does he say much interesting? Like in all this blabbing over the Copa America where he's talking afterwards to journalists, does he come across as an interesting fella, or is it all fairly generic stuff?
No, he's made interesting points. I mean, his complaint about the pitches was absolutely valid. I mean, some of the pitches were a disgrace. And he was saying that the ball's jumping around like a rabbit, which I think is a wonderful phrase. So, we never knew he had that kind of turn of phrase. He's a mystery. Isn't he, Messi?
Yeah, totally. Total mystery.
When you see players, you see their personality expressing itself out on the pitch. With Messi, we still don't really know. So it was a surprise to hear him use these phrases. And he obviously thinks about the game very, very deeply. The way that he plays is almost like he's watching the game sometimes and seeing everything that happens. He remains a mystery. And perhaps on an even deeper level, after we've found out after all this time that he can actually express himself.
Yeah, I must look through some of the quotes. Tim, as ever, thanks so much. There's Dominic, who is stripping wallpaper in Raheny, who says, I always come away from a Tim Vickery interview a bit more educated. A great man to have on your show. There you go, from Brazil to Dominic stripping wallpaper in Raheny, the wonders of technology.
You can fool some of the people all of the time. Thank you very much. Can.
Thanks, Tim. Cheers. Tim Vickery.
Off the Ball on News Talk. News Talk Breakfast.
I'd say you're one of those people, though, who wears the heavy stuff.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. My bag is always just on the boundaries, the limit, when you're going through the
I don't understand that. People
so
see
I
it as a
usually wear
target.
like boots or ankle boots or something that will take the weight out of the bag. Probably have a top and jacket or a cardigan, and I'll carry